Welcome, dear viewers. Sit back, relax, and sip your coffee. When I saw the job listing, it seemed like a dream. A brand new theme park opening just outside my quiet town, promising good pay, flexible hours, and unique experiences. They needed night staff. Security, maintenance, a few people to keep things running while the park slept. I thought, easy money. But from the first night, when they handed me the rule sheet, I realized the job came with conditions. Deadly ones. The park was called Evernight Adventures. It was huge, roller coasters snaked across the skyline, a massive haunted mansion loomed near the entrance, and colorful rides spun slowly in the cooling twilight as I pulled up for my first shift. I was the last one to arrive. Two others were waiting at the employee gate, a guy about my age named Chris, wiry with dark circles under his eyes, and a woman maybe 10 years older, sturdy and no-nonsense, Marla. The manager, Mr. Haynes, met us there. He was an odd man, sharp suit, stiff posture, thick glasses that never quite seemed to focus on you. He didn't waste time on small talk. "Follow the rules exactly," he said, voice flat as he handed each of us a laminated sheet. "Deviate, and you void your contract. And your safety." I chuckled nervously, thinking it was some sort of legal scare tactic. Chris didn't laugh. Neither did Marla. The sheet was strange, almost handwritten despite the lamination. I remember the first few lines by heart. 1. Never enter ride zone 3 after 2 a.m., no matter what you hear. 2. If you see the carousel turning by itself, approach cautiously and greet the rider. 3. Should you hear laughing from the cotton candy pavilion, do not investigate. Clock out immediately. 4. Patrol the haunted mansion once every hour. If the lights flicker, count backward from 10 before entering. 5. If a child in a red hoodie asks for help, do not speak. Lead them silently to the mirror maze. It went on for a full page. Marla tucked it into her jacket without a word. Chris just nodded, like he'd been expecting something like this. I hesitated, was this a prank? Some weird initiation? But when Mr. Haynes looked me dead in the eye and said, "Your life depends on it," I felt a chill crawl down my spine. By 11 p.m., the park was ours. The last of the day staff left, the floodlights dimmed, and the rides groaned into stillness. At first, it was almost peaceful. The rides looked surreal in the low light, silent but still vibrant with color. Music still played faintly in some corners, the kind of tinny, eerie tunes you'd expect from a broken music box. Our job was to patrol, check the maintenance stations, and make sure nothing was vandalized or malfunctioning overnight. Simple. The first hour passed without incident. I walked the paths alone, flashlight bobbing. I passed the teacup ride, its massive porcelain cups frozen mid-spin. The Ferris wheel stood like a giant skeleton against the starless sky. When midnight struck, my radio crackled. Marla's voice. "Zone 3's boundary fence is open," she said. "North side. Zone 3. That was the older part of the park. Mostly carnival games and an ancient wooden coaster called the Widowmaker. I remembered rule number 1, never enter ride zone 3 after 2 a.m. It was only midnight. I figured it was safe. "I'll check it out," I said, heading that way. The air grew colder as I approached. The trees thickened, casting twisted shadows over the cracked pavement. The fence gate was wide open, creaking on rusty hinges. Beyond it, the Widowmaker's blackened track loomed like the spine of some enormous beast. Strange, no wind, yet the gate swung lazily back and forth. I walked a few steps inside, shining my light around. "Marla," I said into the radio, "looks like an old lock broke. I'll close it up." Silence answered me. I waited. Nothing. A soft noise made me turn, wood creaking. The Widowmaker's coaster car sat on the tracks near the loading platform, rocking gently. No one was in it. Yet it moved as if someone had just gotten out. A shiver prickled the back of my neck. I quickly secured the fence with a chain and padlock from the maintenance shed nearby and hurried back toward the central plaza. When I reached the main path again, I noticed something strange. The carousel, the centerpiece of the park, was spinning. Lights blinked on its canopy, and soft organ music floated through the air. I froze. Rule number 2, if you see the carousel turning by itself, approach cautiously and greet the rider. Swallowing my fear, I walked closer. The horses moved up and down in a hypnotic rhythm, casting long, jittery shadows across the cracked pavement. And there, seated atop a white horse near the center, was a figure. At first, I thought it was a mannequin. Pale, unmoving. But as I stepped closer, I saw its chest rise and fall in slow, shallow breaths. A woman. Or something that resembled one. Her face was wrong, too smooth, featureless but for a mouth stretched into a wide, frozen smile. Her hands clutched the pole so tightly her knuckles were white. My voice cracked as I remembered the rule. "Good evening," I said, trying to sound calm. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if listening. The carousel slowed. The music wound down into a sluggish, warped dirge. The rider did not move. I took a careful step backward. Then another. Without warning, the carousel stopped. The lights flickered once, and died. Darkness swallowed the plaza. I fumbled for my flashlight and shone it back toward the ride. The carousel was empty. The figure was gone. I ran. Back at the employee office, Marla and Chris were waiting, faces pale. "You saw it, didn't you?" Marla asked. I nodded. Chris locked the door behind me. "First night's always the worst," he muttered. "If you survive it." His words didn't comfort me. The rest of the night passed in a blur of anxious patrols and tense silences. We didn't talk much, and I noticed Marla clutching something small and silver in her pocket, a crucifix, maybe. At 5 a.m., the speakers crackled to life. Mr. Haynes' voice. "Good work, everyone. Please clock out promptly." Sunlight began bleeding into the sky, weak and pale. As I left, I glanced back at the carousel. It stood perfectly still, its horses frozen in mid-prance. But for just a moment. I could have sworn one of them turned its head, and smiled at me. Conclusion. That was only my first night. The rules seemed crazy then, superstitions designed to scare newbies. But soon, I'd learn just how serious they were. Because on my second night, someone broke a rule. And someone didn't make it out alive. When I clocked in for my second shift at Evernight Adventures, the park looked different. Not in any obvious way, everything was still colorful, still frozen in joyful poses. But beneath the bright paint and flashing lights, something had changed. Something had woken up. And this time, it wasn't just me the park was watching. Mr. Haynes met us at the gate again, but this time, he wasn't alone. A new guy stood beside him, a lanky kid with a mop of curly hair and a bored expression. Name tag crooked, uniform too big. "This is Tyler," Haynes said. "He's joining night staff starting tonight." Chris and Marla exchanged a glance. I could feel the tension like static between them. "Did he get the rules?" Marla asked bluntly. Haynes nodded. "Same as everyone." Tyler grinned lazily. Yeah, I read your spooky ghost stories. Real cute." Chris muttered something under his breath that I didn't catch. Marla just shook her head. Something told me Tyler wasn't going to last long. We split up after roll call, each assigned a different sector. I was stuck with Zone 2, the food courts, kiddie rides, and souvenir shops. Not the worst area, but still, lonely. The night started quiet again. Too quiet. Even the music seemed lower, almost muffled, like the park itself was holding its breath. I patrolled my area, checking off maintenance stations, radioing in at the top of every hour. At midnight, nothing had happened yet. Until Chris's voice crackled over the radio. "You guys seeing this?" he whispered. Before I could answer, static swallowed his words. I gripped my radio tighter. "Chris. Come again." Silence. I debated calling Marla but decided to finish my sweep first. Maybe Chris was just messing with me. I was passing the cotton candy pavilion when I heard it. Laughter. High, childlike giggles, echoing in the empty space. My blood ran cold. Rule number 3, if you hear laughing from the cotton candy pavilion, do not investigate. Clock out immediately. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But Tyler's voice suddenly burst through the radio. "Hey losers," he said, laughing, "I found your ghost. Some animatronic kid by the candy stand. Chill out." My stomach twisted. "Tyler," I barked into the radio, "get out of there. Now." More laughter, this time through the radio itself, impossibly close and layered, like a dozen voices giggling at once. Tyler laughed too. "Man, you guys are so..." His voice cut off mid-sentence. Just, cut. A sharp snap, like a wire snapping under tension. Then nothing. Static hissed through the speaker. I didn't wait. I sprinted toward the pavilion. Against every rule drilled into my head. The pavilion loomed up out of the darkness, pastel-striped tents sagging under the weight of dew, candy machines long since silent. Something shifted inside the main tent. I skidded to a stop just outside, heart hammering. The laughter was gone. The air smelled sickly sweet, like burnt sugar. And on the ground just beyond the entrance, I saw Tyler's name tag, lying in a sticky puddle of pink and red. I called for him. No answer. Only the faint, wet sound of something dragging itself across the ground deeper inside. I stumbled backward, bile rising in my throat. Breaking rule number 3 had consequences. Tyler hadn't listened. And now Tyler was gone. I backed away slowly, never turning my back on the tent, until I was far enough to turn and sprint toward the employee office. Chris and Marla were already there. Chris's face was pale, eyes wide. "You heard it too," he said quietly. I nodded. "Where's Haynes?" I asked. Marla checked her watch. "Should be checking the main gate." "I'll radio." She tried. No response. We waited, the clock ticking down toward 2 a.m. That's when the second thing happened. The lights across the park flickered once, twice, and then plunged the whole place into darkness. Complete and suffocating. Our flashlights flicked on automatically. Somewhere, far across the park, a loud metallic groan sounded, like a roller coaster car grinding loose from its track. Marla's voice was tight. Zone 3. I remembered rule number 1, never enter ride Zone 3 after 2 a.m., no matter what you hear. It was just after 2 o'clock. The noise came again, closer this time, a screech of rusted metal and splintering wood. Chris cursed. "We can't leave the fence open. If it gets out." I didn't ask what it was. I didn't want to know. Marla was already moving, heading for the maintenance lockers. "We need flares. It won't cross open flame." I stood frozen for a second, then followed. In the dim cone of my flashlight, I could see dust motes spinning lazily in the heavy air. The park felt alive now, breathing, watching. Waiting. We grabbed the flares, lit them, and moved toward Zone 3. The fence was still chained, but something on the other side rattled against it, hard enough to make the metal whine. Chris held his flare higher. Through the gaps in the fence, I caught glimpses. A shape, hunched, twisted, almost human but not quite. Long arms that dragged along the ground. A mouth too wide, filled with black, broken teeth. eyes that reflected our lights with a sickly green glow. It sniffed the air. Then it grinned. Marla didn't hesitate. She hurled her flare over the fence. It landed in dry grass, igniting instantly. The creature hissed, recoiling into the trees with a skittering, unnatural speed. We didn't wait to see where it went. We ran back toward the main plaza, flares sputtering in our hands. The rules had kept us alive, barely. We regrouped at the carousel, panting. The horses looked different in the flare light. Less like rides, more like skeletal things ready to gallop into the night. Chris wiped sweat from his forehead. We need to find Haynes. Now. Marla nodded grimly. If he's still alive. We moved carefully, sticking close to each other. The path to the main gate wound past the mirror maze, a low, glittering building made entirely of twisted glass. As we approached, I saw movement inside. A figure. Small. Wearing a red hoodie. My heart dropped into my stomach. Rule number 5, if a child in a red hoodie asks for help, do not speak. Lead them silently to the mirror maze. The kid saw us and ran toward us, arms outstretched. I barely caught myself from yelling. Instead, I grabbed the kid's hand gently and led him toward the entrance of the maze. The glass seemed to shimmer, reflecting 1,000 versions of ourselves as we moved closer. When we reached the threshold, the kid pulled away and gave me a smile. A horrible, broken thing, full of too many teeth. Then he stepped inside, and vanished, his reflection rippling out in every direction. The temperature dropped instantly. Chris gripped my arm. We need to move. Now. We sprinted the rest of the way to the main gate. No sign of Haynes. Only his clipboard, lying abandoned on the ground. And something else. A message, scrawled in black marker across the wall. The park is hungrier than ever. We survived that night, but barely. And when dawn finally broke over Evernight Adventures, it didn't feel like an end. It felt like a warning. Because every shift was a gamble. Every broken rule fed something we couldn't see. And we were running out of rules to follow. After Tyler disappeared and Mr. Haynes abandoned us, Evernight Adventures wasn't just dangerous anymore, it was openly hostile. The rules had kept us alive so far, but now, things were changing. New sounds. New sights. New warnings. And when we stepped into the haunted mansion that night, we realized too late. The park was rewriting the rules. The third night started with a meeting, or what passed for one. Chris, Marla, and I gathered in the employee office, hunched over a battered map of the park. Tyler's name was already crossed out in red marker. Next to it, Mr. Haynes' name, with a question mark. We're down 2, Marla said grimly. Management's not sending replacements. Chris rubbed his temples. And we're still expected to show up like everything's normal. I didn't say anything. There was no quitting now. The contract had a clause, buried in fine print, that said any employee who abandoned their post would be subject to retrieval. After seeing what the park could do, I had a pretty good idea what retrieval meant. The only thing we could do was survive. We each chose our zones. I ended up with Zone 5, the haunted mansion and its surroundings. Lucky me. As I set out, the sun bled away behind the trees, and the park slipped into its nighttime skin, darker, hungrier. The haunted mansion sat at the far edge of the park. It was built to look old, crooked towers, shuttered windows, fake cobwebs draping the sagging porch. But standing in front of it now, flashlight in hand, it didn't feel fake. It felt abandoned. Rotten. Real. I approached cautiously, remembering rule number 4, patrol the haunted mansion once every hour. If the lights flicker, count backward from 10 before entering. The porch light was steady. For now. I pushed open the heavy wooden door, which groaned on its hinges, and stepped inside. The smell hit me first, dampness, mold, something sweet and sour like rotting fruit. Inside, animatronic figures lined the dusty corridors, butlers with peeling faces, ghostly brides with sunken eyes, skeletal children holding cracked dolls. Most were frozen, heads bowed, arms slack. Most. As I passed one of the statues, a woman in a tattered wedding dress, I saw her head twitch slightly, like she was trying to look at me. I told myself it was my imagination. It wasn't. My radio crackled. Marla's voice. Lights just flickered in Sector 5. You need to count down. My throat closed up. I turned toward the entrance, and sure enough, the porch light flickered once, twice, and held. I squeezed my eyes shut and counted backward aloud, voice trembling. 10, 9, 8. The air grew thick and heavy, like the whole house was holding its breath. 7, 6, 5. A soft shuffling noise came from behind me. I didn't turn. 4, 3, 2. The footsteps grew louder, faster. Something brushed my shoulder. 1. The pressure lifted. When I opened my eyes, the mansion was silent again. I finished my patrol as quickly as I could, heart pounding. As I neared the exit, I noticed something new, a door at the end of a side hallway. It hadn't been there before. It was painted black, with no handle. A sign hung crookedly on it, letters scratched in. Staff only. Against every survival instinct, I stepped closer. There was a noise coming from behind it, whispers. Dozens of voices, overlapping, arguing. I pressed my ear against the door. One voice rose above the others, clear and cold. You're not supposed to be here yet. I stumbled back so fast I almost dropped my flashlight. The door didn't open. The whispers didn't stop. I ran out of the mansion and didn't look back until I reached the central plaza. Chris and Marla were waiting. You saw it too, Marla said. I nodded, too shaken to speak. Chris kicked at the ground, frustrated. They're changing the damn park. The rules aren't covering everything anymore. He pointed toward the carousel. Its horses had shifted positions, now all facing outward, heads tilted low like they were watching us. You think we're the only ones here? I asked. Marla shook her head. Something's waking up. Feeding off us. She pulled a crumpled paper from her jacket, her copy of the rules. Some of the writing had changed. New lines were scrawled at the bottom, messy and desperate. 6. If you find a new door, do not open it. 7. Never count past 1. 8. Avoid your reflection after 3 a.m. 9. If you hear someone call your name twice in a row, do not answer. 10. Trust nothing after the third shift. We had broken at least 2 already. The radio crackled again. Only this time, it wasn't Marla or Chris. It was Haynes. His voice was broken, strained, full of static. Sector 7, help me, stuck, new rules, wrong, wrong. And then something else, whispered just behind his voice. Laughter. Soft and wet and close. Chris paled. Sector 7's the old funhouse, he said. No way we're going in there. Marla squared her shoulders. If we leave him, we're next. Reluctantly, we set off toward Sector 7. It was the oldest part of the park, half demolished, filled with rusting rides and collapsing tents. The funhouse loomed at the center, a tilted building of cracked mirrors and rotting wooden beams. Its sign hung by a single chain, creaking in the wind. As we approached, the door swung open on its own. Inside, total darkness. I didn't want to step inside. Every part of me screamed to turn and run. But Marla went first, flare held high, and Chris and I followed. The funhouse was a nightmare. The mirrors were shattered, distorting our reflections into bloated, grinning monstrosities. Corridors twisted at impossible angles. The floor shifted underfoot like a living thing. Somewhere deeper inside, we heard Haynes calling. "Help me. Please." We moved toward the voice, but it was hard to tell where it came from. Every time we turned a corner, the layout seemed to change. Finally, we stumbled into a wide room. And found him. Or what was left of him. Mr. Haynes stood in the center, facing a massive cracked mirror. His reflection was wrong, moving differently, smiling wider. He turned to us slowly. His eyes were black pits. His mouth hung open in a soundless scream. Then his body snapped backward, spine bending unnaturally, and he was yanked into the mirror like a puppet on a string. Gone. The mirror cracked further, spiderwebbing outward. A single line of blood dripped from the frame to the floor. We backed away, hearts hammering. Chris swore violently. "We're next if we stay here." We fled the funhouse, stumbling through twisting corridors until we burst back into the cold night air. Behind us, the door slammed shut, trapping the shifting horrors inside. We didn't speak. We couldn't. Back at the employee office, Marla crossed Haynes' name off the list. Now there were only 3 of us left. And the park was still changing. The carousel spun slowly in the distance, though no music played. The Ferris wheel turned silently, its lights blinking in a slow, deliberate pattern, like an eye opening and closing. Something deep inside Evernight Adventures had woken up. And it wasn't going back to sleep. The rules had kept us alive. For now. But what happens when the rules stop working? When the park decides it's tired of playing games? We were about to find out. Because our 4th night was coming. And it was going to be hell. The park was changing. The rules were evolving, and the boundaries between reality and nightmare were blurring. After surviving the horrors of the Haunted Mansion and the Funhouse, we thought we had seen the worst. But Evernight Adventures had more in store. The Mirror Maze awaited, and with it, a new set of terrors that would test our sanity and our will to survive. The 4th night began with an eerie silence. The usual ambient noises of the park, the distant laughter, the creaking rides, the rustling leaves, were absent. It was as if the park was holding its breath, waiting for us to make the next move. Marla, Chris, and I convened in the employee lounge, our faces pale and drawn. The events of the previous nights had taken their toll, but we knew we couldn't stop. The park wouldn't let us. "The Mirror Maze," Marla said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's next. TripAdvisor. +4. YouTube. +4. Dawson Law Firm. +4. Chris nodded, his eyes haunted. Rule number 11, if you enter the Mirror Maze, never look directly into your reflection. I swallowed hard. We had no choice. The park was guiding us, pushing us toward the maze. Dawson Law Firm. +2. Reddit. +2. Doel. +2. As we approached the Mirror Maze, the air grew colder, and a dense fog enveloped the area. The entrance loomed before us, a Gothic archway adorned with cracked mirrors and flickering lights. A sign hung above, "Reflections of the Soul." We stepped inside, the mirrors immediately distorting our images. The reflections twisted and contorted, showing us versions of ourselves that were grotesque and unrecognizable. "Remember," I said, "don't look directly into your reflection." We navigated the maze carefully, avoiding direct eye contact with the mirrors. But the maze seemed to shift around us, the paths changing, the mirrors moving. Suddenly, Chris stopped. "Did you hear that?" A soft whisper echoed through the maze, repeating our names. Marla. Chris. Alex. Rule number 9, Marla said, her voice trembling. If you hear someone call your name twice in a row, do not answer. We pressed on, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. The mirrors began to vibrate, the reflections within becoming more aggressive, pounding against the glass as if trying to escape. Suddenly, one of the mirrors shattered, and a figure stepped out, a twisted version of Chris, its eyes black voids, its mouth a gaping maw. "Run!" I shouted. We sprinted through the maze, the distorted reflections chasing us, emerging from the mirrors, reaching out with clawed hands. We finally burst out of the maze, collapsing on the ground outside, gasping for breath. The entrance to the maze sealed shut behind us, the mirrors inside returning to their original positions. Chris looked at us, his face pale. "We can't keep doing this. The park, it's alive." Marla nodded. "And it's feeding off us." We returned to the employee lounge, our minds reeling. The rules were no longer just guidelines, they were survival tactics. And the park was changing them, adapting, finding new ways to torment us. As we prepared for the fifth night, we knew that the final confrontation was approaching. The park had tested us, broken us, and now it was time to fight back. The mirror maze had shown us the true nature of Evernight Adventures, a living, breathing entity that thrived on fear and chaos. The rules were its way of controlling us, of keeping us within its grasp. But we were done playing by its rules. The final night was coming, and with it, our last chance to escape. The park had tested us, broken us, and now it was time to fight back. The rules were no longer just guidelines, they were survival tactics. And the park was changing them, adapting, finding new ways to torment us. As we prepared for the fifth night, we knew that the final confrontation was approaching. The park had tested us, broken us, and now it was time to fight back. The final night was coming, and with it, our last chance to escape. The fifth night began with an eerie silence. The usual ambient noises of the park, the distant laughter, the creaking rides, the rustling leaves, were absent. It was as if the park was holding its breath, waiting for us to make the next move. Marla, Chris, and I convened in the employee lounge, our faces pale and drawn. The events of the previous nights had taken their toll, but we knew we couldn't stop. The park wouldn't let us. "The mirror maze," Marla said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's next." Chris nodded, his eyes haunted. "Rule number 11, if you enter the mirror maze, never look directly into your reflection." Class action park. I swallowed hard. We had no choice. The park was guiding us, pushing us toward the maze. As we approached the mirror maze, the air grew colder, and a dense fog enveloped the area. The entrance loomed before us, a Gothic archway adorned with cracked mirrors and flickering lights. A sign hung above, "Reflections of the Soul." We stepped inside, the mirrors immediately distorting our images. The reflections twisted and contorted, showing us versions of ourselves that were grotesque and unrecognizable. "Remember," I said, "don't look directly into your reflection." We navigated the maze carefully, avoiding direct eye contact with the mirrors. But the maze seemed to shift around us, the paths changing, the mirrors moving. Suddenly, Chris stopped. "Did you hear that?" A soft whisper echoed through the maze, repeating our names. Marla. Chris. Alex. "Rule number 9, Marla said, her voice trembling. "If you hear someone call your name twice in a row, do not answer." We pressed on, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. The mirrors began to vibrate, the reflections within becoming more aggressive, pounding against the glass as if trying to escape. Suddenly, one of the mirrors shattered, and a figure stepped out, a twisted version of Chris, its eyes black voids, its mouth a gaping maw. "Run!" I shouted. We sprinted through the maze, the distorted reflections chasing us, emerging from the mirrors, reaching out with clawed hands. We finally burst out of the maze, collapsing on the ground outside, gasping for breath. The entrance to the maze sealed shut behind us, the mirrors inside returning to their original positions. Chris looked at us, his face pale. "We can't keep doing this. The park, it's alive." Marla nodded. And it's feeding off us. We returned to the employee lounge, our minds reeling. The rules were no longer just guidelines, they were survival tactics. And the park was changing them, adapting, finding new ways to torment us. As we prepared for the fifth night, we knew that the final confrontation was approaching. The park had tested us, broken us, and now it was time to fight back. The final night was coming, and with it, our last chance to escape. The mirror maze had shown us the true nature of Evernight Adventures, a living, breathing entity that thrived on fear and chaos. The rules were its way of controlling us, of keeping us within its grasp. But we were done playing by its rules. The final night was coming, and with it, our last chance to escape.